And now, ladies and gentlemen, speech by His Excellency the President of the Republic of Indonesia, followed by the striking of the gong, marking the official opening of the 13th World Export Development Forum, WEDF 2012. Please give a warm welcome to His Excellency Dr. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May peace be upon us all. Excellencies, Ministers of the Indonesian Cabinet, and Excellencies, Ministers of Economic Affairs of the friendly countries, Your Excellency Mr. Pascal Lamy, Director General of the WTO, Your Excellency Mr. Supachai Panitspadi, Secretary General of the UNTAD, Your Excellency Dr. Surin Pitsuwan, Secretary General of the ASEAN, Your Excellency Ms. Patricia Francis, the Executive Director of the ITC, Your Excellency Mr. Sindiso Nguyenja, Secretary General of the COMESA, Excellencies, Ambassadors, and representatives of international organizations, distinguished speakers and participants, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to welcome all of you to Jakarta, a bustling city which I hope gives you a glimpse of Indonesia as one of the growth markets in Asia. Indonesia is honored to host the World Export Development Forum 2012. I commend the Indonesian Ministry of Trade and the International Trade Center for their joint effort to convene this forum. The theme of this year's forum, Linking Growth Markets, New Dynamics in Global Trade, is indeed important. This is particularly pertinent as we witness today the emergence of new dynamic and fast-growing economies. There are countries that increasingly have made significant impact on the global growth. 10 years ago, the global economy was shaped by countries that belong to the rich club of OECD group. In 2001, for example, the OECD countries' share of global trade in goods and services was around 70%. Meanwhile, developing countries' contribution at that time was only 20%. 10 years ago, the number of people living on less than $1 per day was growing, notably in most developing and least developed countries, or LDCs. The share of the LDCs to the global trade accounted only 0.4%. An UNTAD report shows that LDCs lost about $2 billion per day because of unfavorable global trade rules, 14 times the amount they receive in aid. Today, we are witnessing a different reality. It is the reality that helps shape the building of new global trade architecture. One of the dominant features of this new reality is the emergence of growth markets. These are economies outside the developed world, which over the past 10 years have made significant contribution to the global economy. To some bandwidth, countries belonging to this category include China, India, Indonesia, Korea, Brazil, and Turkey, Mexico and Turkey. These countries contributed a share of 25% to the global GDP in 2011, a sharp increase from only 13% in 2000. It is predicted that in 2050, their share will reach 46%. Their share to the global trade in goods reached over 30% in 2011, double from around 15% in 2001. And in commercial services, their share reached up to 25% from 12% 10 years ago. The growth markets have also become central in South-South trade. This is one of the trading blocks that forms an important part of the new architecture of the global trade. The dynamisms of the South has come primarily from the expansions of trade among developing countries. In 2011, the export share of all developing economies to the global trade increased to 46% from 33% in 2001. This is also the case for Indonesia. Indonesia's trade with other developing countries, especially in Asia and East Asia, amounted to 50% of its total trade. Diversification of trade destinations is a must, considering the continued uncertainty in the global economy. This situation impacted some developed countries, which for long have been our traditional markets. It is therefore natural that Indonesia has seriously explored more export opportunities in markets such as in Africa, Central Asia, and Latin America. I believe many developing and emerging countries also pursue similar approach. I hold the view that the trend of South-South trade will be more promising in the future, and its contribution to the global trade will continue to increase. This is in line with the Asian Development Bank's predictions that the share of South-South trade to the global trade will double in the next 2 decades. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I have no doubt that growth markets have plenty to offer. They are important pillar of the global growth. They are the driver of the global trade, and they are important destinations and sources of investments. In order to increase their effective contribution to the global trade, growth markets must capitalize on their potentials and build stronger linkages among them. For this, let me share some thoughts. First, growth markets need to prioritize trade facilitations, especially by developing both hard and soft infrastructures. Hard infrastructures include ports, roads, and advanced ICT networks. With such infrastructure, we can enhance connectivity and subsequently tackle trade constraints. Soft infrastructures include efficiency of custom services for export and import. It also includes transparency and related enabling services such as logistics, transport, and distribution services. We cannot underestimate the value of reforming trade facilitations. According to a World Bank study, improving trade logistics by lowering transaction costs and increasing trade speed and predictability could enlarge global trade flows by 486, I should say 468 billion US dollars annually. In line with this premise, the Indonesian government has launched the Master Plan for the Acceleration and Expansions of Indonesia's Economic Development 2011 to 2025. This plan provides a comprehensive economic development strategy for our archipelagic country of more than 17,000 islands. It aims to advance trade facilitation through connectivity, quality human resources, and development of 6 economic corridors across the country. At the regional level, we have the Master Plan of ASEAN Connectivity, as well as the sub-regional interconnectivity cooperation among ASEAN member states. We have the Indonesian-Malaysia-Thailand Growth Triangle, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippine East ASEAN Growth Area, and the Greater Mekong sub-region. Full implementations of these initiatives will lead to a deeper ASEAN economic integration, cemented by infrastructure connectivity, institutional connectivity, as well as people-to-people connectivity. ASEAN connectivity is the first step in the development of enhanced connectivity between ASEAN and the wider region. It is a mechanism to achieve a vision of an ASEAN community that is regionally integrated and globally connected. This is precisely how growth markets can be linked through greater connectivity. This connectivity will in turn contribute positively to the global trade and eventually to the global growth. Second, growth markets need to tackle the existing trade barriers. Non-tariff measures in developing countries often represent a major impediment to international trade and market access. Within the South-South trade, non-tariff measures could be as high as conventional tariffs. Although the WTO has addressed this issue, there remain some aspects which are not yet fully dealt with. Therefore, I invite all of you to discuss and showcase initiatives that could enhance regulatory transparency and predictability, especially of the non-tariff measures. In services trade, we are still witnessing serious barriers. It is believed that compared to reducing trade barriers in goods, reducing barriers to trade in services could generate twice the economic impact. In many countries, services now represent a bigger share of their economic output. With higher productivity and greater innovations, service industries become more and more essential as a driver of economic growth. In developing and emerging economies, service industries are critical in generating more employment and thus in improving their welfare. Service sector is also important to the real sector. It could affect the performance of export of goods in many sectors, such as agriculture, mining, and manufacturing. I have no doubt that if we want to achieve robust global trade, in which the growth market serves as its engine, we must tackle non-tariff measures and ease trade in services. In this regard, Indonesia believes that the WTO Doha Development Round must resume. It must achieve its objective of lowering barriers in trade among countries. With lower barriers, we will have increase in trade. And as trade increases, the global growth will also rise. I trust that many of you are fully aware that in December next year, Indonesia will host the WTO ministerial meeting in Bali. With your support, I hope that the meeting will bring fresh ideas on how to deal with this long stagnant Doha development round. The meeting in Bali should also discuss on how best to strengthen international trade liberalization. And third, growth markets must address the supply chain gaps and opportunities. Global supply chains linked are critical to the global trade. Let me elaborate this point in the context of achieving food security and developing the SMEs. For countries with growing population, trade is an important component of their food security strategy. It helps stabilize domestic food availability, especially in the face of climate change-induced supply shocks. Therefore, unimpeded supply chain links are critical to seamless trade in goods and services, which support food security initiative. In this regard, and on its part, Indonesia has taken measures to facilitate regional trade that covers food safety and inspection activities. We have taken measures to assure flawless and secure cross-border food supply activities. At the regional level, through the ASEAN Integrated Food Security Framework and the ASEAN Plus 3 Emergency Rice Reserve, we are also working on programs that increase food productivity and productions. We coordinate on many aspects of food policies, including stocks, supply and demand, prices, and logistics. This is aimed at lowering costs and improving commodity supply chains and competitiveness among ASEAN countries. In the context of SMEs, narrowing the gap of supply chains links is, narrowing the gap of supply chain links is critical in integrating the SMEs into the global value chains. In order to be competitive in the global value chains, these SMEs must have better access to information, technology, market, and finance. Developing and emerging economies must make concerted effort in the microeconomic regulatory reform. This reform will help facilitate the development of the SMEs and in improving their productivity. It is also critical that we develop initiatives that can link more effectively SMEs from least developed countries into regional and global value chains. In many growth markets, microenterprises and SMEs are considered as the backbone of economic growth and development. They provide wide opportunities for job creations and poverty alleviations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am convinced that the growth markets, including within the South-South framework, will continue to play an important role in the future. Indonesia, which is regarded as one of the growth markets, has a strong commitment to keeping its economy robust. We are also committed to contributing more greatly to the global trade. I urge growth markets to increase their collaboration and build linkages and connectivity. This endeavor, I believe, will help achieve a global growth which is strong, sustainable, balanced, and inclusive. With that in mind, it is my fervent hope that this forum will discuss and explore innovative ideas on how to build effective linkages among growth markets. I am optimistic that you will succeed, even though I was told that in economics, two people can say the opposite things, but still both win a Nobel Prize. Thank you. I also hope that the forum will discuss new ways to strengthen global trade. I believe that greater trade interaction will contribute to greater peace and prosperity. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all productive deliberations, and by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I declare the World Export Development Forum 2012 open. I thank you.
Please accompany His Excellency for the striking of the gong. Minister of Trade, Mr. Gita Irawan Wiryawan, Executive Director of the International Trade Center, Ms. Patricia Francis. The 13th World Export Development Forum 2012 is officially opened.